Welcome to my PowerPoint presentation on new species in Jurassic World Evolution 3. Now this is based off of my video I did on the returning roster for the game, where I speculated that we would have maybe around 7 more slots for new species, of course not counting the already revealed Guanlong and Protoceratops. So we're just going to go ahead and stick with that. The first thing I think we should get in JWE3 is a Prooropod. I would like to get Mosaurus, and that is because this is in the Lost World novel. However, I don't think we get Mosaurus. I don't think Frontier is going to give us this. I think instead, we're much more likely to get the far more popular Plateosaurus. Plateosaurus will probably get this big version here, Trossengensis. Well, so it's, it still is very much a prosauropod, just like Mosaurus is very much a prosauropod. They have like the same, general body shape, but Plateosaurus is like, the archetypical prosauropod. It's the one most requested by people. So despite the franchise history of Mosaurus, I think this is what we'll see. So that's my first lock for the new species roster at launch. I also think we're very much overdue for a new Hadrosaur in general. We didn't get any new Hadrosaurs in JWE2. So I think it kind of makes sense for it to potentially be something they sneak into the launch of 3. My choice for a new Hadrosaur would be Hadrosaurus. Hadrosaurus is from the first novel, and it's also present on Isla Sorna in film canon because you can see a specimen card for it in Roland Tembo's card packet. However, all subsequent Jurassic World media has ignored the presence of Hadrosaurus on Sorna. So maybe that's been decanonized, sort of. But I don't really believe in marketing materials. So to me, I still consider Hadrosaurus and Maiasaur to be canon InGen era Isla Sorna animals because they're both present in props in the Lost World. Hadrosaurus is, of course, a North American Hadrosaur from New Jersey. So it would be kind of interesting to have an East Coast animal. We don't have many East Coast animals in Jurassic World Evolution 2 because there aren't many. Actually, I don't think we have any East Coast animals, right? The closest we get is like Texas. Megalodon, I guess, is like in Florida, I think there's a dig site. So I guess Megalodon counts, but yeah, Hadrosaurus would fill that role. However, I don't think we're going to get Hadrosaurus. I don't think Frontier is going to put this one in either. So once again, my choice for the animal that I would like to have in the game, I don't think is what we'll actually get. I think we're much more likely to get Shentungosaurus, this big, giant, big Hadrosaur. Shentungosaurus would be much more impressive than just getting a Hadrosaurus. You can see the little size scale here. No, I don't want to ask the AI assistant anything. Fuck out of here. Get out of here with this trash. Why does Adobe Acrobat have a goddamn AI assistant? Anyway, sorry, unrelated to anything. Yeah, Shentungosaurus would be really interesting because it would be a Hadrosaur that's basically the scale of like a Rex. And that is pretty cool. I will admit. I mean, ideally, we'd get both Hadrosaurus and Shentungosaurus, but I don't think we can expect both. So we got to make a commitment, and I think Shentung is the one that would be more popular and is more likely. We also should get, I think, another Ornithomimosaur, specifically one that is feathered. We have not got a new Ornithomimosaur since the launch of JWE1, unless you count Dinochirus, which I don't. It's an Ornithomimosaur. It's considered, oh god, how does it work? It's like an Ornithomimosauroid or something, and not an Ornithomimosaurid, something like that. The point is, it's very closely related to your traditional, Gallimimus style Ornithomimid, but not quite. Or maybe it's these guys are Ornithomimids, and collectively with Dinochirus, they're Ornithomimosaurs. Frankly, I can't keep it straight. So yeah, my pick for a feathered Ornithomimosaur is Ornithomimus. I think there's other candidates, they could go for something like Pelicanomimus, which kind of could take some design inspirations from like a pelican. And it has a little bit more interesting head shape and whatnot. But Ornithomimosaurus is, the template for the group of animals. I think it's a pretty good choice to include. Plus, it's kind of, at least in my mind, it's gotten some increased prominence by its very unique and enjoyable depiction in Prehistoric Planet. So perfect time to add it to JWE as well. I would expect that the inclusion of a feathered ornithomimosaur like Ornithomimus would come alongside the exclusion of Archaeornithomimus. I would expect there to be a swap out there. We'd lose, the least favored existing Ornithomimosaur for a new feathered one to replace its slot. Ornithomimosaurus is a little smaller than the ones we have in game, I think, too. I think Struthiomimus is bigger than this, so it would also kind of have a slightly different size niche, which would help support it. Oh, I also remember I wanted to mention honorable mention for a new Hadrosaur inclusion, Lambeosaurus. Lambeosaurus is a very popular animal that a lot of people would like to see. So I think it's also possible we see a Lambeosaurus over Shantungosaurus. I think Shantung's more likely, but I think Lambeo is also still more likely than Hadro. So Hadro would be like third, maybe, but probably even worse than third. We also probably are due for another large carnivore of some description. So the one I picked out here was Torvosaurus. It's a fairly popular choice when people are asked about what kind of animals they'd like to see in the game. It's a large megalosaurid, which would be somewhat different than most of our other larger carnivores. They could do the Jurassic World thing and scale it up a little bit, make it a little bigger than even this to make it a little more unique. There's a lot of people who want Megalosaurus to stay, but I also could see it getting cut because I don't feel like the design is particularly iconic. I don't see too much love for the JWE2 Megalosaurus as much as I see people who would like Megalosaurus to stay because it's Megalosaurus. So potentially they could cut Megalosaurus and take another crack at making a more iconic Megalosaurid design with Torvosaurus. I think that's possible. This is a choice from my list here that I'm actually not very settled on. I debated on this a lot, but I think it's a pretty reasonable inclusion. We'll get to the honorable mentions at the end where I'll talk a lot more about carnivores, because there's a lot of other ideas I had, but I think at the end of the day, a lot of them won't pan out for particular reasons. Number 5. I think we need some sort of Japanese dinosaur. I think if we have this globe-trotting campaign, right? We go to all these different locations across the globe. It would be weird to me if we had a dinosaur park in Japan, but we didn't have a Japanese dinosaur to go with that, right? Maybe even more than one. So I pretty early, I settled on the idea that there's got to be something from Japan. So this could be Fukuisaurus, Fukui Venador, Fukui Raptor. There's some other choices there. I believe there's 9 species known from Japan. The one I settled on is Fukui Raptor, which is a Megaraptoran. Now, the problem with this guy, he's a little bit similar to Australovenator. Both in they're both Megaraptorans, so they're similar for that reason, also similar in scale. I think the thing they could do to set this guy apart is by making him fully feathered. Australovenator was not, so that would be a good way to differentiate the two. It's also possible that Australovenator doesn't make it into base game. I believe in my final list he did get cut and bumped. So having a replacement new Megaraptoran makes sense. I think the inclusion of a second Megaraptoran in JWE3 is fairly likely. I think it's an underrepresented group of carnivorous dinosaurs. And so if we did not include Fukui Raptor, then I would think Megaraptor would make it in instead. Obviously being the namesake, and Megaraptor is a pretty cool name. That would seem reasonable. Now, why did that go there? Okay, sorry. I think we also, of course, should expect a new Terasaur of some description and a new aquatic. So I put in one of each. My choice for a new Terasaur, I wanted a long-tailed Terasaur because they're underrepresented, right? We get the Morphodon, and that's it. So my choice was, I guess this is pronounced Dirk. Dirk. It's the largest Ramperinkid. So this would give us our first Ramperinkoid, whatever, Terasaur. And it would give us the largest available option for that. So I would expect this to be an animal that scales up to maybe be a little bit bigger than Dimorphodon in terms of wingspan. And it would, have a little bit of a different a different vibe to it. Would have this more narrow head with these like, I guess the Morphodon's teeth also stick out pretty strongly, but this would have more of a, um, more of like a fishing specialized feel to the head, uh, while still having this diamond shaped long tail and whatnot. I think there's potentially plenty of other options you could put in for pterosaurs, but like this to me is like the big hole in the roster, right? Um, we have an Neurognathid, we have two Asdarchids, we've got our Ornithocheirid style pterosaurs, we've got our Pteranodon style pterosaurs, like we got Tapejara. There's still potentially some other things, but this is my call here. I think Ramperinkus itself is obviously a more iconic name, but I think it's just too small. I think it makes more sense for them to pick something that's better scaled for the game, like Dirk, than to pick an iconic but small named animal like Ramperinkus itself. Also, no idea if I'm saying Ramperinkus right. Ramperinkus. That sounds right. But I keep hitting the wrong button, dude. The Adobe is just awful. You know what? No, this is the PowerPoint experience. I've given talks off PowerPoints at scientific conferences, so this is accurate. This is how it goes sometimes, especially if you got elderly scientists running around, and the batteries die, and it can be just terrible. For an aquatic, the aquatic inclusion, I still don't have something that I feel is like a slam dunk. So I've included 3 options here. The first two, the third one is my actual pick, but I think the first 2 are also pretty good options. So we cracked the seal on fish near the end of JWE2's lifespan with Dunkleosteus and Megalodon. So why don't we add another different looking fish and we go for something like Aleidsichthys. This is a very, very large fish, very popular, in part from Ark. So it kind of works on a meta level to include, popular animals from other dinosaur games. But it would also be a very large and different lagoon animal that would, have its own vibe. And that was the big thing I was trying to do when I was picking out an aquatic species. Like the existing aquatic roster is very diverse. And so I was trying to find something that like fit in a different way. But at the same time, I didn't want something that could be a semi-aquatic, because I think that's more like DLC territory. So it's got to be fully aquatic, but I don't want it just to be another like ichthyosaur or mosasaurid. Well, that's not true. Another ichthyosaurid or another plesiosaurid, something we've got a lot of. We actually don't have a lot of mosasaurids. We only got the 2, Tylo and Mosa. Another one that we don't have that would be very unique in the roster would be some sort of prehistoric whale, like a Basilosaurus. Now, until the last DLC hit, this would have been out of the running as a Cenozoic animal, but we got Megalodons, so kind of the aquatics don't really follow the trend of the rest of the game being very Mesozoic focused. The aquatics go early with Dunk and late with Megalodon, so they could continue that and go in kind of any direction. Basilosaurus would be our first mammal. It would be kind of ironic for our first mammal to be a water animal, but I think it's possible. I think out of my 3 choices here, the Basilosaurus is probably the least likely. And the next one is my actual pick for what I think it's in. And like I said before, you know what? We only got 2 Mosasaurids. Tylosaurus is not very popular. I think there's good odds Tylosaurus gets cut. So then we need like a second Mosasaurid maybe to flesh out the roster. So why not Globidens? This guy is a small Mosasaurid, which is unique. Like, potentially they could keep Tylo and Mosa, both, as larger animals, and put in the smaller Globidens alongside them. Plus he's got this unique tooth structure here, where he's got these, like, big flat teeth. For, like, I think he, like, is thought to be a shellfish eater. So yeah, I think this could be a good include. Which is why I stumbled over saying Mosasaurids earlier, because I had Mosasaurids on the brain, because I knew this guy was coming up. So that's my full list then. It's Plateosaurus, Shentungosaurus, Ornithomimus, Torvosaurus, Fukui Raptor, Dirk, and Globidens. Now, honorable mentions. I wrote down a lot of ideas when I was working on this. Or what else I thought could be here. So the first place I was thinking was along the lines of ankylosaurids. One thing that kind of happened in our list when we were going through and thinking of what got cut and what stayed is that we ended up cutting all the notosaurids, and that feels weird. But the notosaurid designs we have are all very old JWE1 designs that just don't stand out that well. So then I had to think about, well, if we cut it, what do we bring in for a new notosaurid? Well, there's a lot of options, actually, I think. I mean, there's no like singular standout option, but there are options. So one option is Borealopelta. Borealopelta is the very famous notosaurid dinosaur mummy, where we actually know like the color of the animal, having this like rusty orange coloring, which would allow us to actually put in another animal like Sinosauropteryx, where we have the real coloring on the animal in game, which is cool. However, it is kind of just a notosaurid. It doesn't have any outstanding properties or features beyond the fact that it's so well preserved. Another idea I had for this was Prooroplytes. Prooroplytes is one of the carcasses in Fallen Kingdom. So it's technically a canon animal in my mind, although it's, again, an animal that's been pretty much ignored by all subsequent media and marketing material. Like, it's not on the DPG list or anything, despite being in the film. So to me, it's still canon, but I don't expect to ever see it show up in the game. A more iconic new ankylosaurid might be Stegoros. This is the small ankylosaurid from South America that's got kind of a hatchet tail. It's got like a very wide, flat tail, like with ridged. Instead of having club, it's a club on the end of its tail. It's got kind of this ridge running down the side of the tail, making it into more of like an axe. Isn't really the right way to think of it, because it's got these wedges going down the side of the tail the whole length. It's not just a big like axe head at the end. It's like a series of flat nodules sticking out of the sides of the tail, and that would be very like unique for a creature design in the game, right? We don't have anything that looks like that because there's not many things that look like that. But he's a small little fella, Stegoros. So maybe we got to get his relative, Antarctopelta. Antarctopelta, like after Stegoros was discovered, the Antarctopelta remains were looked at again, and it was revealed that Antarctopelta looks actually very similar to Stegoros. We don't have the tail though, right? So what we can infer is that Antarctopelta is probably very closely related to Stegoros, and therefore probably has the same style of tail that Stegoros has, but it's a much larger animal, so Antarctopelta, with a design based off Stegoros, would probably be the most interesting ankylosaurid design we could add to the game. However, I decided the 3 herbivores that I put in the roster here were more important, so this got bumped to 4th, and then, since it was 4th, it was cut completely. So that's why it's here at the top of the honorable mention list. This is like, I think Antarctopelta is my 8th animal on the list, essentially. Another one that's very popular that a lot of people suggest is Argentinosaurus. This would be another Titanosaur. This would be our 3rd Titanosaur, I believe. I think Alamosaurus is a Titanosaur, but maybe it's not. There's some weird thing with like Saltosaurids and Titanosaurs and like how they relate to each other, and I don't remember the details. Well, either way, this would be our 3rd very large body Cretaceous sauropod, alongside Dreadnoughtus and Alamosaurus. And it would actually end up being our 4th, because we know Titanosaurus is in the new movie, obviously, and we'll get it in game, right? So I think the presence of Titanosaurus in Rebirth means we won't see Argentinosaurus. So this is an honorable mention because I think it bears discussion, but will not get in, very explicitly not get in. So Argentinosaurus is out because Titanosaurus will be a thing. I think we're due for a new Therizzinosaurid, but nothing really stood out for the inclusion here. Segnosaurus and Orlicosaurus are kind of the other most famous Therizinosaurids, but they're kind of just, there. They don't stand out too much. The one that is more distinctive is one of the newest Therizinosaurids, Deinonychus, which is a two-clawed Therizinosaurus, or Therizinosauride. Instead of it having the three like Therizinosaurus, it's got just two. And it's much smaller. It's like, human-sized, essentially. Bigger, probably heavier, maybe heavier, I should say, probably. Maybe heavier than a human, but in that rough scale. So that could be interesting as an animal, both because it takes the unique Therizinosaurus like body plan and shrinks it down to a smaller size, makes it a more interesting spot in the roster. 2 claws instead of 3, the chance to do a more paleo-accurate version of a Therizinosaurid than the Dominion design. I think a Therizinosaurid at some point in JWE3's lifespan is essentially extremely likely, if not guaranteed. I couldn't really decide for sure if I thought it would be Deinonychus. So it ended up being bumped to the honorable mentions. Probably, I don't know, 9th, 10th, something like that. Also included here, Megaraptor, if we don't get Fukui Raptor. I already covered that on the Fukui Raptor slide. And then if we don't get Fukui Raptor, we get some other Japanese dinosaur. There's a variety of ornithopods. I think there's one sauropod, a Dromaeosaurid. Another animal that's very popular is an inclusion, and is one of the dinosaurs we know the most about, which would be very interesting to have in the game with a very realistic design, again, with a real color palette, would be Psittacosaurus. However, I think the thing that rules out Psittacosaurus is it's too similar to Aqualops and Microceratus, which are both film canon animals. Psittacosaurus is actually soft canon in a way, because it's on Jurassic Park The Ride. Like, we have a franchise design for this animal that's very out of date. But comes from a kind of a core piece of 90s, early 2000s Jurassic media. So it's one of those animals that really feels to me like it being left out of the franchise. It's very unfortunate, but I just can't see us actually getting it. I would really like to see us get a new Abelosaurid. I think Rugops would be a pretty good inclusion. Although there's plenty of other options, Rajasaurus, Pycnonemosaurus, just look at the genome of the Indominus Rex, and there's like 6 Abelosaurids in there. Pick any one. However, the reason I don't think we'll get a new Abelosaurid, at least not right away, if ever, is because we will get a new Majungasaurus designed for Chaos Theory, presumably at some point. So they're already designing and giving us a new style of Abelosaurid. Perhaps then they won't be compelled to do a new one, right? I still think Rugops, even alongside Majungasaurus, would be a good include. It's a smaller Abelosaurid, which fills a unique niche. And Abelosaurids are just cool. I really like them. Another honorable mention is the Fallen Kingdom corpses. We already covered Pelorapleides, but there's another dead animal in that film, which is Teratophonius. This is a smaller Tyrannosaurid. So this would be kind of in the niche of like Quanjusaurus. And again, it's, to me, it's a canon animal, but it's been kind of ignored after Fallen Kingdom. I would love to see it in the game, but I don't think we'll get it. In a similar vein, I would love to see the novel roster get finished in the game, but I don't expect it to. We're missing Othnielius/Nanosaurus, Procompsognathus, and sort of Hypsilophodon to finish up the original 15 roster for the park in the novel canon. I say sort of Hypsilophodon because Dryosaurus is called out by name as being at least one of the Hypsilophodontids in the park. But Lost World makes it pretty explicit that Hypsilophodon is also an InGen clone. So I've always felt like the 33 Hypsilophodontids, or whatever the number is, in the novel version of Jurassic Park included both a mixture of Hypsilophodon and Dryosaurus. And they just didn't differentiate those as different species. That's neither here or there for the inclusion in the DLC, but yeah, I don't expect to see those. I think we're due for another non-hadrosaur, non-iguanodontid ornithopod to go alongside of our Dryosaurus, but the more obvious inclusions from like paleontology would be Tenontosaurus. That's number 1, or maybe number 2, Thescelosaurus, or potentially Orodromius or any of the the potential burrowing ornithopods. I forget the names of some of those. Another honorable mention is crocodilomorphs, Caprasuchus, Dinosuchus, anything in the Suchus line. However, I feel like the new water mechanics, the semi-aquatic animals and the deeper water, merits a semi-aquatic DLC pack, a species pack at some point along the line. I think that's something they can really like lean into as a selling point for a DLC. So I expect them to do that. So to me, I don't think we'll see any crocs in base game, but I think we'll see them as a DLC pack. I expect to see my theory, my idea. It's not headcanon because it's not. There's no canon. My idea, my concept would be to see a semi-aquatic DLC that has like maybe 2 crocodilomorphs, and then maybe like Tanystropheus or some other semi-aquatic creatures, and then comes alongside like a revamped semi-aquatic Nothosaurus as like a free update that goes along with the DLC, right? So like everybody would get the Nothosaurus, and then people who buy the DLC would get 4 additional semi-aquatics consisting of like at least 2 different crocodilomorph type animals, and then like Tanystropheus or some other things. We'll probably do a little DLC speculation video at some point, but I also think it's kind of like it's like hideously premature to speculate on DLC. So I may not actually make that video. I've got some ideas, but I think it's like it's too far flung. It's too speculatory to do, I think. And then my last honorable mention was a new Spinosaurid. I think we're really overdue as well for a new Spinosaurid design. I think Irritator is the obvious inclusion. It's got a very interesting name in history. And we got some interesting features of its anatomy that we could, include in the game that would make it interesting. The way the jaw hinges is kind of neat. I don't know the current like paleontological standing on exactly how the jaw on Irritator would look. As I understand it, it's just that the jaw hinge, the way where the jaw connects to the skull on the bottom kind of bows out slightly when the mouth is open. I know some people went like really crazy with this on paleo art, and you've got like Irritators whose jaws split apart like they're the Predator. And like it's clearly not going to be that, but it could be like maybe you'd have a nice little pouch under the jaw, and when it opens its mouth, that pouch would expand out a little bit, and you could have an accompanying feeding animation where it actually like almost pelican style like scoops up some fish or something. You could do some fun stuff there. Also a chance to put the Spinosaurus paddle tail type design on a more baryonyx styled animal, which I think would be fun. Don't necessarily know that there's any paleontological support for that. I just like it aesthetically. But I think the big thing arguing against all of this, the new Spinosaurid, is the fact that we're going to probably get 2 new Spinosaurid designs anyway. And that's because we get the Rebirth Spinosaurus design, which we will get for sure. And then we get probably, if they, I'm assuming they'll do a Chaos Theory design for a Chaos Theory DLC. And then we'll get a new Suchomimus design from that, which is not terribly dissimilar from the old Suchomimus design, but is technically, a remodel. So that's why I decided not to include a new Spinosaurid on the list here for our speculation. Only the that's why I went for Torvosaurus, is what I'm trying to say here. I went for Torvosaurus because I didn't think we'd get a new Abelosaurid or Spinosaurid or Megaraptor, and we needed something big in the list. So yeah, that's my point. I think that's kind of all I have to say about like the speculation here. We'll see if I'm right on any of these, of course, as things are announced. It's also certainly possible that some of these will end up being like separate DLCs maybe down the road and not launch species. Who knows? It's also possible there's a lot more new species at launch than we have here, or maybe even less. Maybe there'll be like 3 new species in the game at launch, and everything else is animals coming over from the first game. Who knows? But yeah, I just thought it'd be fun to speculate a little bit on you know, what I expect, what I think will be added, just so we got this out here and we can reference it, you know, when shit's revealed, and see if I was completely off base, or you know, maybe I was in the right track, but I didn't pick the right animal, right? Which is kind of fun. Anyway, if you had as much fun speculating about this crap as I did, uh, you can leave a like on the video and sound off in the comments to help support the channel. You can also, you know, leave a message in the comments if you hate AI assistants being arbitrarily added to existing programs that I feel don't friggin' need them, like Adobe. But I don't really use this anyway, so whatever. Anyway, that'll be it for this video.